What's up, guys? I wanted to make a video this week about how things are going with my job. Now, it's been about, let's see, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. It's been almost 9 months. I'd say a few more weeks, it'll be 9 months since I started working here in this non-truck driving job. And I'm not just making this because I want you guys to know how happy I am to have this job. Trust me, this job has its frustrating elements and its challenges. And that's the same thing with any job. But overall, I would say that despite, not having the satisfaction that comes as a truck driver, like I know if you're a truck driver, then you know the feeling that I'm talking about. There is something that's kind of satisfying about driving a truck. With all the mentally taxing, psychologically heavy parts that come with truck driving, there's also a satisfying thing about it. And I think that satisfying element is just the acknowledgement that you're doing something that not many people are able to do. Despite the fact that we have, I don't know, I'll look it up and I'll put it on the screen. And I'll let you know how many truck drivers there are in this country. I know there's got to be at least, God, I don't know, maybe between 3 and 4 million truck drivers in this country. But then you look at the population overall, and there's probably, well, I don't know the answer to that either. I'm thinking maybe 80 million people in this country, at least, maybe more. And so for there to only be, a fraction of the amount of people driving a truck, that right there is enough to tell you that there's something satisfying about being able to do it and do it long term and, be successful at it enough to provide an income, a livelihood for your family. And there's nothing easy about that. Well, the one thing I'll say is that another big reason why I'm updating you about my job in a realistic kind of way. I know I have a lot of abstract videos that aren't relevant to truck driving or my job, but if I could just be down to earth in this video and give you guys good news about what I'm experiencing, in case you are a truck driver, in case you are wondering, would it be worth it to look into doing something else? So far, it's going well for me, and it has been less than a year. But, since I started working this job, I've made 3 bonuses, 2 bonuses. I'm on my way to getting the third. The third one, I'll have it in about a month. I got a raise this month. I still drive a lot. I still have AI monitoring on me right now. It's not nearly as big of a deal because I'm not driving a 70-foot long vehicle that weighs 80,000 pounds. But they still do watch me, and they've got the same shit in this van that they put in trucks. Literally the same stuff that watches your eyes and everything. I kind of that's one thing about the job that I don't like, that I wish was different, and it's not normal circumstances. When I say that, I mean that the other individuals that share the same job title as me as a field operations, that they're actually doing the same thing that I do. None of those people drive as much as I drive, and I've explained why that is before. That I pretty much live in an area where, in order for me to get to my territory of houses that I work at, it requires me driving a substantial amount more than anybody else that does what I do has to do for the company. The company hires a lot of contractors, though, and those contractors, they're not in-house employees, but they do exclusively work with this company solely, and they actually drive more than I drive, but they make more money than I make, and they're driving their own personal vehicles, or their own work vehicles, to do the job. We also have in-house technicians and in-house construction. That's very limited. Those workers have company fleet vehicles just like I have, and sometimes they might have to drive as much as I'm driving. It really just depends on the area and the scope of homes. There is one thing about this company that I gave you false information on, and that's because I felt like I was misled. But I was told, or I was led to believe last year, that this company owns all these houses in the state and in other states. Like every house that I go to, I was under the impression that the company I work for owns these houses, but they don't own any of these houses. They own nothing. They're managing these houses that are owned by several investors. And that makes a big difference. I know the state of Georgia, they just passed, or they're trying to pass, they haven't passed it yet, but they probably will try to pass a Senate bill that basically says there's a cap on the amount of properties that big companies are allowed to own in the state of Georgia, like single family residence homes, and the cap is 500. But I've told you guys before that we don't own, but we work with investors who own something like 14,000 properties in the state at any given time. And so if they pass that Senate bill, that means that there's going to be downsizing, and there's going to be changes in the way that things are done. It's a really good thing, though. I'll say that this company doesn't own all these properties. That's huge, because if they did, and the Senate passed a bill capping the maximum amount of homes that can be owned by a single company, then that would obviously mean that people were going to be laid off if that bill was passed. But as it is, instead of the company itself downsizing, the company's investors would have to downsize. They'd have to sell a lot of the properties off. And so what that does is it would just mean that new contracts would be made between the company that I work for and new investors. So they would have to subdivide their assets amongst other owners, and however that works. We're talking about something that would happen over a long span of time, basically. And, well, it might affect the company that I work for, but not directly as if they owned all the properties that I work at, or all the properties that they own in this state. So I know that's a lot of red tape talking about that stuff, but it is a pretty big deal if this bill gets passed. And who's to say that if it does get passed, then it's not going to affect me at all. It may very well affect me. The company that I work for, they've already discussed going into different types of property management, not just single family homes, but like multi-family homes or apartments or student housing, and managing those properties. And if that's the case, that could very well change the nature of my job. But overall, I think they really seem to like me, and they don't regret their decision to hire me. I've actually been pretty handy for them. I told you guys about, like, whenever I first started working here, the construction crews that I would go in behind to verify that their houses checked out okay. Gave me a nickname. They called me Mr. Picky because they think that I'm just going in there and trying to find stuff, like purposely trying to find anything I could find to call them out on for not doing, but that's not actually what I do. I just do my job the way that I was trained to do it. And if I call them out on something and they have to turn around and come back to fix something that they overlooked the first time around, it's not anything personal. They like to take it personally, but it's just really me doing my job. And if I do my job correctly, then that just means I'm looking out for a future resident of the house. So that's part of my job. The other end of my job is making properties move-in ready, and that involves doing an additional inspection, taking a bunch of pictures, reporting anything that I find. And the biggest thing that is the most time-consuming aspect of my job is absolutely making sure that the house is clean before somebody moves into it. That's something that can end up being very, very, very time-consuming. And that's another thing that's been frustrating about the job itself. Like, I get mixed signals quite a bit from the company and different people within the company about how to approach a house that's disorderly, it's not clean, this, that. I've been told in the past that, if it's something that is reported and it gets ignored or brushed off, that it's for a legitimate reason, and in that case I'm the one that's responsible for cleaning the house. But then more recently I've also been told that no, if you report something as being unclean and it gets overlooked, then you continuously report it, you continuously fight it. So I've been told before in the past that, like, especially at a move-in inspection, if the house isn't clean, it's your job to make sure that it's clean. So that means you're going to have to clean the house. But now I'm actually being told that, like, you don't have time to clean the house. There's too many other things that you have to do. So you need to report it so that a cleaning crew can come out and clean it. So it's different stuff like that, and them just really trying to figure out what all somebody with my job title is actually supposed to be responsible for. And people within the company can't seem to agree on what that actually is. They kind of go back and forth with it, in other words. And so, yeah, there's a lot of mixed signals, mixed messages with stuff like that. And I have done a lot of cleaning. I've actually got some time lapse here of me cleaning a house, or actually mopping a 3,000 square foot house. Like mopping it, hand mopping it. All the LVP and stuff in that house, it was just disgusting. And somehow got overlooked by the construction team, and the house was made ready, turned over to leasing, which is the branch that I work for. And the initial inspection, whoever did it, they didn't report how dirty the floor was. So the floors were dirty, and then it was suddenly time for somebody to move in. I had to go and do the move-in inspection. The people were going to move in like the following day. And so at that point, it came down to me to basically mop the entire house, which took a long time to do. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. It's a very tedious job with a lot to remember. And there's a lot on the technical aspect of it, and it keeps me on my toes quite a bit. And that's one thing that I will say I actually like about the job, is that it's multifaceted in expectations. So I'm not just doing one thing, I'm doing various things throughout the day and checking so many different components on houses that it keeps my brain very, very busy, which I like. I like to have a busy mind. That's one thing that made me so restless as a truck driver, especially if I was just driving and that's all I was doing. I got really bored with that very fast. And so I would tend to get frustrated after driving for so long and doing nothing else. Kind of sucked after a while. But you know, with that being said, there were certain truck driving jobs that I really liked. That if they weren't so incredibly challenging, I probably would have ended up sticking with those types of jobs. Like I always liked food service, but I was always under the impression that, you know, like I didn't want to hurt myself doing it. Is one of the most physically intensive jobs I ever had was doing food service for a bakery supply warehouse. And I have a couple of videos on the channel of me actually doing 2 different routes for that job. And I mean, on a job like that, you're out there by yourself, you're doing a route, you're making, you know, at least a dozen, but maybe more stops per day on top of all the driving that you're doing, and you're unloading things by hand. And I think in the second video that I posted, I actually was talking about in the video that I unloaded like over 14,000 pounds off of a trailer by hand in one day, and that was crazy. But in the same video, I was talking about how the original driver had the stops ordered for the route. And when they made all those stops according to that order, it was all based on the store hours. Like, it started with the earliest opening place and the latest closing place. and the route literally went in that order. But that was actually counterproductive, because when you're making a route, you don't go by store hours. You shouldn't go by store hours. You should go by distance between stops, as opposed to, or actually in congruence with where you're headed after you leave a certain city. So like, I literally sat down and I reordered the stops on this route and studied, what would be the best way to move my way through a big city like Columbia, South Carolina, where I've got multiple stops, plus I've also got all these other stops in different cities. And it was so satisfying after I reordered the stops. And the reason why the order of the stops is so important is because when they're building a manifest for a trailer, they're going to load the trailer in order according to whatever order the stops are in. So you're literally pulling each package off in order according to which stop you're at next. And that's literally how they load packages on pallets based on the order of your stops. So it usually worked out pretty good. I'll say that like after I rearranged those stops, I noticed a huge difference. It cut down my driving time within major cities, and I actually cut about, I don't know, a good half day or so off of the route, the time that it was taking me to get the route done. And that was huge. And the fact that I actually was not just driving the truck and unloading the truck, but actually figuring out the best way, the logistic aspect of how to get all these supplies delivered to all these different businesses, and coming out in such an extremely effective kind of way. That was huge for me. That was very satisfying. And so what I'm getting at is that it was like a multifaceted job. It didn't just involve driving a truck. It involved unloading things by hand. So there was this heavy physical demand to it, which actually, it was like getting a workout every single day. I was in really good shape when I did food service. But also having control over how successful I was by using my comprehension, my common sense, my ability to read things, my ability to understand maps, understand road infrastructure, all that. It all went into my success as a food service driver. And that was amazing. Well, the reason why I'm breaking this down so much and going into so much detail about it is because a job like this is very similar. I am not actually getting to design my own route with this job, but I am essentially doing all these other multifaceted things. Nobody taught me a specific way to do this job. They told me everything that I was expected to do. They gave me a list of job duties as far as like what I'm looking at in inspections and this and that. They basically listed all the expectations and all the stuff that I'm supposed to do, but they didn't tell me how to do it. They said, you come up with your best procedure, the most convenient, most productive way of doing these inspections, and you stick with it, and you do it the same way every time, because that's going to ensure that you are as productive as you can possibly be. And so I figured out the best way to do it, the quickest way to get things done, the most efficient way to get things done. And it's made a big difference. And I've made a lot of impact since I started at this company. And this job, in some ways, it's very easy, but in other ways, it's very difficult. And it's a lot to keep up with. And it's just, like I said, there's so many different facets to what you're doing. And the work itself is... it's so textured. There's just so much variance in what you're doing that it doesn't really get boring. And I typically, I'm always running. I run all day, and I don't typically stop. And a lot of times I find myself short-handed on time and what I'm able to do. And what that does is it makes the days go by so much faster. And I think that's why I started running so much, you guys, is just because I'm always on my feet. I'm always running around, very active. I've got a Fitbit, and some days, especially, I think the most steps I ever got recorded on my Fitbit in one day, this was a day that I happened to do a 10K, but with all the houses that I went to that day, all the inspections I did on top of the running that I did after I went home, I had 32,000 steps in one day. I can show it to you in my Fitbit app. But it was just crazy. And I like that. I like being on my feet. I like fast-paced stuff. I don't like being confined in a vehicle. I don't like driving that much. I liked driving a lot more before I became a truck driver. I say I probably, in 10 years' time as a truck driver, I'm pretty sure I reached 1 million miles. I mean, it wouldn't be far-fetched or hard to believe that that's the case. I don't have an overall, even estimate of all the miles that I drove as a truck driver, but I'm pretty sure it's probably at least 1 million miles altogether in nearly 10 years. And so the fact that I'm still driving, I mean, it's a perk to have a commercial driver's license. I have formal training, I have the skill, I have the know-how, I have the exposure to it. And so I have a big advantage over typical people that take this job that don't have all that formal experience as a professional driver. But at the same time, it's not that much different as far as the expectations go with the AI camera and all that. I was really hoping that I could get away from stuff like that, but I didn't. But it's just one of those things that I've had to learn to live with. And overall, it is what it is, I don't let it bother me. I just still do things all the time, and the stupid camera goes off, and I don't even care. I'm just whatever. I'm a safe driver. I don't need to be babysat. They've never had to slap me on the wrist or anything like that for anything that I've done since I started working here. But yeah, I mean, that is one of the things that I don't like about it. And on top of that, I've got all the driving that I mentioned before that I'm doing, and so that can be rough for sure. But I love the fact that I'm starting my day out in my driveway. That's another thing I should mention, that I've got this vehicle in my possession all the time. So I literally start each day leaving my driveway, and I end each day pulling back into my driveway in my work vehicle. I don't have to go to a terminal or an office or anything like that to start my day. I just start my day from my driveway. And that's huge. Like, I love that. I love that I don't have to put any wear and tear on my own personal vehicle to make a paycheck. That is fantastic, guys. I love that. They don't give me a hard time about the routes that I choose to take to get around. A lot of times I find that I'm avoiding the interstate for obvious reasons. They don't ever give me a hard time about that. They're not paying me mileage. They're paying me by the hour. So, you know, a lot of times when I choose to get off the interstate, it can save time if the traffic's bad. So if there's one message that they have absolutely tried to get across to me that I'm still trying to process, it is absolutely them telling me that, like, whenever you find an issue at a property, if you're an independent person, which I kind of am, a lot of times what I find they're telling me is, like, don't fix it yourself, report it. And the reason why they're saying that is because they're starting to say more and more, like, you don't have time to do somebody else's job that they should have done. So instead of trying to do somebody else's job, report that somebody didn't do their job. And then that person's going to go back out to the property and they're going to do it. And like I said, the only time that typically that doesn't happen is if there's a move-in and the people are moving in the next day. And if they can't create like an emergency work order for something to get handled, that's when they're finally like, okay, we've done everything else in our power to do about this issue that you're pointing out. There's nothing we can do to get it done. That means that you're going to have to be the one that handles it. And I'm equipped for that, guys. That's another thing. Like, they gave me a company credit card to go to Home Depot to make purchases for stuff that I need. I also get stuff delivered to my house every week as far as like my inventory. My van is completely stocked with everything that I need to do my job. Whether it's batteries or cleaning supplies or, you know, just all kinds of stuff that I use to equip houses with. I have to do a lot of branding stuff and put, you know, signs and stuff up in houses that people are doing walkthroughs in. And so, yeah, it's just cool. I've never had a job quite like this before. And the benefits are fantastic. The PTO and the paid holidays and all that stuff, it's just great, guys. This year alone, I've got 14 paid holidays. And I never got that with truck driving. Usually with truck driving, they won't even give you all the major holidays off. They'll be like, we're going to give you all but one of them off, and you have to choose which one you want to work on. That's what JB Hunt did. And so, yeah, I'm still just floored by the fact that I have this job. And like, at the end of the day, I mean, I stop at the same time every day and I go home. Or at least I try. I might have to work some overtime here and there, but they're really trying to avoid. They don't want to pay us overtime. So if it's something like that, and, you know, if it's a last resort, then I will get overtime. I typically don't get more than 8 hours of overtime a month, I would say. Even the way that they do routing here, they use algorithms. They use a split from the company. Like, the people that build my route, they use algorithms that keep up with all the houses in our system, and it does like pattern recognition, and it does it has to read certain things in our database to come up with a route. But the people that actually build the route, they live in India. And the reason why they've got people in India doing our routes is so they can wait as long as possible before they actually finalize it and release it to us. That way, if something changes, they're trying to wait till the very latest point that they can possibly wait to build a route. Instead of trying to do it the day before, they wait till the morning of before they'll release it. That way, if there's anything that comes up at the last second, they'll try to put it in our route so nothing gets missed or overlooked. And a lot of times that's not good, because if you've got a machine trying to build a route for you in the middle, like when they're building the route in India, it's like 3 a.m. in the time zone that I live in. So when they're putting that route together, they're using traffic data that's based on the roads here in Atlanta at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm trying to do the route at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So all that traffic and stuff is not being taken account of. And it means that it makes everything take a hell of a lot longer to do. And that sucks. That's one thing I don't like about the job, for sure. They don't always take into account all the driving I'm doing or how long it takes me to drive as much as I drive. And that's one thing that I really hate about it. That gets frustrating, but I'd say that overall it's worth dealing with it. I mean, my life is completely different than it was last year when I was working for JB Hunt. I was working third shift. I was driving from Jackson, Georgia, all the way to Fairburn, Georgia, every single day, driving to the terminal and driving back. And in my personal vehicle, I think I put maybe like 30,000 miles on my own car last year. Just from driving back and forth to the JB Hunt terminal in Fairburn. And yeah, I don't have to deal with any of that shit now. There is something that I miss about that job that I knew I would miss, and that is, being on the road in the middle of the night and there not being hardly any traffic on the road. I kind of miss that. But I'd say that this is absolutely worth it. Working first shift, having a company vehicle, knowing I'm doing a good job at what I'm doing, having really good middle management. So like my supervisors, they're awesome. I get along great with my supervisors. There's still a lot of corporate rigidity involved in the atmosphere because it's a big company. But there's also like human beings, actual human beings on the front line that you're working with every day that try to make your job as easy as it can be. And that makes a big difference. If there's ever something about my route that I need to change, all I got to do is pick up the phone, call my supervisor, explain to her what's going on. And she never has any objections about my suggestions about how to do things or improve things that the original route overlooked or didn't take into consideration. And that's a big deal. Like, imagine, like, if you're a truck driver, imagine getting dispatched for a load and realizing that, you didn't account for all the extra time that this load they dumped on you is going to take to get done. But because you're not going over on your clock, they expect you to do it. They don't care how long it takes as long as you're not driving illegally, right? So then you might have to compromise and be like, well, damn it, I'm going to have to work. I'm going to have to spend, even as a local truck driver, I'm saying, you're thinking I'm going to have to spend all this extra time that I didn't account for getting this load done. and there's no way I can back out of it. They're making me do this. It's not like that at all here. It's like I said, me trying to get as much work done in an 8-hour period as I possibly can. And when that 8 hours is up, I might have to finish what I'm doing at the house I'm currently at. But after that point, if my route's not done, it's just considered, something that's going to roll over till the next day or maybe a day after, When it's time for me to go home, I go home. I don't have to stay over. I don't have to do any of that stuff. And like I said, if I find something that's going to be more productive with less driving, I'll suggest it. And like I said, my supervisor's never told me no. She always says, do what makes the most sense. And she knows that routing, the way that they set routing up, it rarely makes the most sense. And that is such a big deal, you guys. To know that, like, I don't have to argue with anybody. I don't have to get frustrated. All I gotta do is make a phone call, and it's wonderful. It's great. So much better than truck driving ever was. Am I making as much money as I could as a truck driver? Well, for somebody that failed a drug test, probably so. Yeah, I'm probably I actually make more money now than I made when I was working at JB Hunt locally. And, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not the big earner in my household. My wife is, she blew me out of the water with that. She, like I told you guys last year, she got a big promotion. And so ever since she got that promotion, I don't think I'll be able to match her income anytime soon. And that's okay. Like, I was, for a time period there, I was the big earner in the household. But I mean, I don't have an ego that leans toward that, As long as I'm working and I'm supporting my family, man, we're doing good. We're doing very well financially. We don't struggle, We could always do better, but we're fine. And that's huge, From where I was 2 years ago when I had the flatbed job, and where I'm at right now, like, things are just so much better. My life is so much better. I'm not fighting to keep my head above the water. I just go to work every day and I try to enjoy my job. I love the fact that I can work in the field by myself. As long as I'm getting my work done, I can do whatever. I can listen to music while I'm working. I can listen to audio books. I can listen to YouTube videos while I'm doing my job. And just, I mind my own business and nobody bothers me. Every now and then there'll be a Karen of the neighborhood that comes up complaining about the fact that our shutters don't match our siding or some stupid shit like that. But or every now and then the HOA will threaten us because there's a trash can by the street that hasn't been pulled up to the house. But other than that, it's gravy, you guys. I kind of want to stay where I'm at. I have room to be promoted into a higher position if that's ever something that I choose to do. The company offers and actually encourages that kind of thing, but it's not something that I have to do. I could keep this job. I could ultimately stay here doing what I'm doing now and definitely do it. and I think I'd be okay with that. And the longer I'm here with this company, the better the benefits are going to get. Literally, like after 5 years at this company, you're literally getting like 2 months worth of PTO off per year. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. It's like I don't know. I have to look at it again. It's somewhere between like 50 and 60 days of PTO per year after you've been here for 5 years. It's insane. Like I've decided I'm just gonna take this whole month off. I'm just not gonna come to work for a whole month. But yes, man, I've been talking for a long time. Okay, I'll let you guys go with that. I thank you for watching. I say take it easy, take care, stay tuned, keep in touch. I'll see you guys later.